The coins hit the table like gunshots. That's $300, the rancher said. Her wages for 6 months, plus the contract price. The room went silent. Every man in the Silverhorn saloon turned to stare. The woman behind the bar froze, her breath catching in her throat. She's not for sale, Silas Drummond growled from his corner table. I didn't say she was, the rancher replied evenly. I'm paying what she's owed, and buying out her contract. Legally. The woman's name was Charlotte Webb. She was 29 years old, and until that moment, she had believed she would die in this place. 6 months earlier, Charlotte stepped off the afternoon stage in Copper Bend, Montana, with a single carpetbag and a letter of introduction. The town stretched along a muddy street between rocky hills, smaller than she'd expected, rougher than she'd hoped. She had come west as a housekeeper. The advertisement in the Philadelphia newspaper had promised respectable work for a widow willing to relocate. Room, board, and $12 a month. The man waiting at the stage stop was not the rancher she'd expected. He was Silas Drummond. Thick-necked, cold-eyed, smelling of whiskey and cigars. He looked her over the way men looked at livestock. You're the widow Webb, he asked. I am. Come on, then. He led her not to a ranch house, but to the Silverhorn saloon. Her stomach tightened. There's been a misunderstanding, she said carefully. I answered an advertisement for housekeeping work. That's right, Drummond said. He'll keep the rooms upstairs. Cook for the girls. Clean. What girls? He smiled without warmth. The ones who work here. Charlotte's blood ran cold. She understood instantly. This was not a respectable household. This was a brothel. I won't, she said, stepping backward. Drummond's hand shot out and gripped her arm. He signed a contract. I paid your stage fare from Philadelphia. You owe me. I signed for housekeeping. And that's what you'll do. You'll keep house. Unless you'd rather work upstairs with the others. Panic clawed at her throat. She had no money. No family. Her husband had died 2 years ago, leaving debts she'd only just finished paying. She had nothing. I'll leave, she whispered. I'll take the next stage. With what money? Drummond's grip tightened. You're in debt to me now, Mrs. Webb. You'll work it off, or I'll have the sheriff lock you up for breach of contract. And so she had stayed. For 6 months, she scrubbed floors, cooked meals, and kept the rooms upstairs clean. She did not speak to the girls who worked there, not because she judged them, but because she could not bear to see her own despair reflected in their eyes. Drummond watched her constantly, reminded her weekly of the growing debt. Stage fare, room, board, the cost of the clothes he'd provided when she arrived with too few. She was a prisoner in all but name. Then one afternoon, a rancher named Gideon Hart walked into the saloon. He was tall and lean, in his late 30s, with dark hair silvering at the temples and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a clean shirt and spoke quietly to the barkeep. Charlotte brought him coffee without being asked. Their eyes met briefly. She looked away. You're new here, he said. 6 months, she replied. Something in her tone made him pause. You don't seem like you want to be. She said nothing. Words were dangerous. Gideon came back the next week. And the week after. He never drank whiskey, never went upstairs, never played cards. He sat at the corner table, drank coffee, and watched. One evening, as Charlotte cleared his cup, he spoke quietly. If you need help, Mrs. Webb, you only have to say so. Her hands trembled. I can't. Why not? Because I owe him, she whispered. I signed a contract. Gideon's jaw tightened. Contracts can be broken. Not by me. He studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, placed a silver dollar on the table, and left. That night, Drummond cornered her in the kitchen. That rancher's been asking questions about you, he said. You tell him anything? No, sir. Good. Because if you try to leave, I'll make sure every sheriff in Montana knows you're a contract breaker. You'll never work again. Charlotte nodded, her throat tight with rage and helplessness. But the next afternoon, Gideon Hart returned. And this time, he brought $300 in cash. Now, as the coins gleamed on the table, Drummond's face darkened. She's contracted to me for another year, he said. Gideon pulled a folded paper from his coat. Montana law says a contract worker can be bought out if wages are paid in full and terms are met fairly. I'm paying her 6 months' wages at the rate you advertised, plus the stage fare, plus the contract termination fee. Drummond's hand moved toward the gun at his belt. You pull that, Gideon said calmly, and every man in this room will testify you drew first. Charlotte's heart hammered. She couldn't breathe. She agreed to stay. Drummond growled. Did she? Gideon looked at Charlotte. Mrs. Webb, do you want to leave? Her voice came out stronger than she expected. Yes. The word hung in the air like smoke. Drummond's face flushed dark red. His hand hovered near his gun, but he didn't draw. Too many witnesses. Too many eyes. Fine, he spat. Take her. But don't come crying when you find out what kind of woman she really is. Charlotte's cheeks burned, but she held her head high. Gideon scooped the coins back into his leather pouch, gestured toward the door. Mrs. Webb. She walked out of the Silverhorn saloon without looking back. Outside, the late afternoon sun felt like grace. Charlotte stopped on the wooden sidewalk, breathing in air that suddenly tasted clean. Thank you, she said, her voice shaking. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Gideon settled his hat on his head. You don't owe me anything. I owe you $300. No, he said firmly. You don't. That money bought your freedom. It's not a loan. She stared at him. Then why did you do it? He met her gaze steadily. Because no one should be trapped. Tears stung her eyes. She blinked them back. I have a ranch 12 miles north, Gideon continued. If you need work, real work, respectable work, I could use a housekeeper. $20 a month, room and board. No contract. You can leave any time you want. Charlotte's throat tightened. Why would you trust me? Why wouldn't I? Because she was a widow with no references. Because she'd just walked out of a saloon. Because the world had taught her that trust was a luxury women like her couldn't afford. But Gideon's eyes held no judgment. Only quiet certainty. All right, she whispered. I'll come. They rode north in his wagon as the sun sank low. The Montana hills rolled wide and golden around them. Gideon didn't speak much, but his silence felt comfortable, not cold. The ranch appeared as dusk fell, a sturdy log house, a barn, corrals, and a few outbuildings. Modest but well kept. It's not much, Gideon said. But it's mine. It's beautiful, Charlotte said honestly. Inside, the house was clean but sparse. A man living alone. She saw that immediately in the bare walls, the functional furniture, the absence of curtains. There's a room upstairs, Gideon said. I'll sleep in the barn tonight so you can settle in. You don't have to. I do, he said simply. You've been through enough. That kindness undid her. Charlotte sank into a chair and wept. Not delicate tears, but deep, shaking sobs that had been locked inside her for 6 months. Gideon stood awkwardly for a moment, then quietly left. When she finally composed herself, she found blankets laid out on the porch and a lantern burning in the barn. The next morning, Charlotte woke to the smell of coffee. She dressed quickly and came downstairs to find Gideon at the stove, frying eggs. I didn't mean for you to cook, she said. He smiled faintly. I've been doing it for 3 years. One more morning won't kill me. They ate together in companionable silence. Then Gideon showed her the house, the root cellar, the spring house. I run about 200 head of cattle, he explained. I've got 2 ranch hands who come during roundup, but mostly it's just me. I'm gone long hours sometimes. You'll be alone here. I don't mind alone, Charlotte said. He nodded as if he understood exactly what she meant. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Charlotte cleaned, cupped, mended, and kept the house. Gideon worked the land. In the evenings, they sat on the porch and talked, carefully at first, then more freely. She learned he'd come west after the war, that he'd lost his parents to fever, that he'd built this ranch with his own hands and wanted it to mean something. He learned she'd been a schoolteacher before she married, that her husband had been kind but reckless with money, that she'd loved him anyway. One evening, as they watched the stars emerge, Gideon said quietly, "You're safe here, Mrs. Webb. I want you to know that." She looked at him. "I do know." "Good." But safety, Charlotte was learning, was not the same as freedom. Because even though Drummond was 12 miles away, she still felt his shadow. She flinched when Gideon's voice rose in frustration over a broken fence. She couldn't sleep when the wind rattled the shutters. She startled at every unexpected sound. One afternoon, she dropped a dish. It shattered across the kitchen floor. Gideon appeared in the doorway. "You all right?" Charlotte knelt, hands shaking as she gathered the pieces. "I'm sorry. I'll replace it. It's just a dish. I'll pay for it. I'll take it from my wages." "Charlotte." His voice was gentle. "It's just a dish." She looked up at him, tears streaming. "I can't stop being afraid." Gideon crouched beside her. "You don't have to stop today," You just have to keep living. And somehow, that helped. Slowly, the fear began to loosen its grip. Then one morning, a rider came up the road. Charlotte was hanging laundry when she saw him. Her stomach dropped. It was one of Drummond's men. She ran inside. Gideon. He came quickly, saw the rider, and stepped onto the porch. The man reined in his horse. Mr. Hart. Mr. Drummond sent me with a message. I don't want his messages. He says the woman you took is wanted for theft. Says she stole money from the saloon before she left. Charlotte's blood turned to ice. That's a lie. Drummond's filed a complaint with the territorial marshal. The man continued. Says she owes restitution. $500. Gideon's expression hardened. Tell Drummond if he wants to make accusations, he can come here himself. The man smirked. He'll do that. And he'll bring the law. He rode off, leaving dust in his wake. Charlotte sank onto the porch steps, shaking. He won't stop. He'll keep coming until he drags me back. Gideon sat beside her. Then we fight. How? I have nothing. No proof. No witnesses. You have me, Gideon said quietly. And I'm not letting him take you. 2 days later, Silas Drummond rode into Gideon's ranch with the territorial marshal and 3 armed men. Charlotte stood on the porch, her hands clenched tight. Gideon stepped in front of her, calm and immovable. Marshal Teague dismounted, a wiry man with a skeptical face. Mr. Hart, I've got a complaint here, says Mrs. Webb stole $500 from the Silverhorn Saloon. That's a lie, Charlotte said, her voice steady despite her fear. Drummond sneered. You calling me a liar, woman? I am. The marshal held up a hand. Mrs. Webb, did you have access to Mr. Drummond's cash box? I cleaned his office, but I never touched his money. She was alone in there plenty of times, Drummond said smoothly. Money went missing the week she left. You do the arithmetic, Marshal. Gideon spoke quietly. Marshal, how much did Drummond claim she stole? $500. And how much did I pay to buy out her contract? The marshal frowned. I heard it was $300. Exactly, Gideon said. If Charlotte had $500, why would she need me to pay $300 to free her? Why wouldn't she just buy herself out and keep the rest? Drummond's jaw tightened. Maybe she hid it. Search the house, Gideon said. Search her belongings. You won't find a dime she didn't earn honestly. The marshal considered this. Mr. Drummond, you got any proof beyond your word? My word should be enough. It's not, the marshal said flatly. Not without evidence. Drummond's face darkened. She's a thief and a whore. Gideon moved so fast Charlotte barely saw it. One moment he was standing still. The next, Drummond was on the ground, blood streaming from his nose. Say that again, Gideon said, his voice deadly calm. Drummond's men reached for their guns. The marshal stepped between them. Enough, Teague barked. Mr. Drummond, unless you've got proof, this complaint is dismissed. She signed a contract, which Mr. Hart bought out legally. I checked with the county recorder. The transaction's registered. Drummond staggered to his feet, spitting blood. This isn't over. Yes, it is, the marshal said. You ride back to Copper Bend and leave these folks alone, or I'll start asking questions about how you run that saloon of yours. Drummond glared at Charlotte with pure hatred, but he mounted his horse and rode away, his men trailing behind him. The marshal tipped his hat. Ma'am, Mr. Hart, sorry for the trouble. When they were gone, Charlotte's legs gave out. She sank onto the porch steps, shaking. Gideon sat beside her. You're safe now. He'll come back. No, Gideon said. He won't. Men like Drummond are cowards. He only fights when he knows he'll win. Charlotte looked at him. You hit him. I did. You could have been arrested. I don't care, Gideon said quietly. No one talks about you that way. Something shifted in her chest. Not gratitude. Something deeper. Why do you care so much? She whispered. Gideon met her eyes. Because you deserve to be cared about. The words settled into her like warmth after cold. That night, as they sat on the porch under a sky full of stars, Charlotte finally spoke the truth she'd been carrying. I'm not whole, she said softly. What happened to me? It broke something. You seem pretty whole to me, Gideon replied. I'm afraid all the time. I don't trust easily. I wake up at night thinking I'm still there. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I came back from the war with nightmares. Took me 2 years before I could sleep through a thunderstorm without thinking I was under fire. She looked at him in surprise. Being broken doesn't mean you're not worth loving, he continued. It just means you survived something hard. Charlotte's throat tightened. Is that what this is? Love. Gideon turned to face her. I don't know what else to call it. Her heart pounded. I'm not ready. I know, he said gently. I'm not asking you to be. I'm just telling you the truth. She reached for his hand. He took it carefully, like it was something precious. I think, she said slowly, that I could love you too. Someday. Someday's good enough for me. The months that followed were quiet and good. Charlotte began to sleep through the night. She laughed more easily. She started a garden and began teaching reading to the children of nearby ranchers. Gideon built her a bookshelf. He brought her seeds from town. He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel like she owed him anything. And slowly, the fear became something smaller. 1 year after Gideon had paid for her freedom, Charlotte stood in her garden, hands in the soil, and realized she was happy. That evening, she found him mending tack in the barn. Gideon. He looked up. I'm ready, she said. He stood slowly. Ready for what? To marry you, if you still want to. His face broke into a smile that transformed him. I want to. They were married in the small church in Copper Bend on a Sunday morning in June. The whole town came. Even the marshal attended. Silas Drummond was not there. He'd left Montana 3 months earlier, run out of business when 2 of his girls testified against him in a territorial court. As Charlotte stood beside Gideon and promised to love and honor him, she thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, terrified, trapped, convinced she would die in that saloon. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone free. When Gideon kissed her, the church erupted in applause. That night, as they returned to the ranch, their ranch now, Charlotte looked at the hills rolling wide under the stars. Thank you, she said softly. Gideon pulled her close. For what? For seeing me when I was invisible. For fighting when I couldn't. For believing I was worth saving. You saved yourself, he said. I just opened the door. Charlotte smiled and rested her head against his shoulder. She had been told she was for sale, that her body, her labor, her very life could be bought and sold. But Gideon had taught her something different. Freedom couldn't be sold. It could only be claimed. And she had claimed hers.